Admiral Keth Varen watched as another Meridian warship exploded in the darkness of space. The bright flash briefly illuminated the command center of his flagship before fading away. It was the 12th vessel lost today. At this rate, the entire defense fleet would be gone by morning. Status report, he demanded, his four eyes blinking rapidly in sequence, a sign of extreme stress among his species. The enemy has breached Sector 7, Admiral, reported his second-in-command. Loranthi's orbital defenses are failing. Ground reports indicate void units have reached the capital city. Keth Varen's skin paled to a sickly blue. Loranthi was not just another planet. It was the crown jewel of the Meridian Alliance, home to 3 billion citizens and the seat of their government. After 3 years of bitter fighting, their enemies had finally reached their heart. Order immediate evacuation. Of the Council and all essential personnel, he commanded, redirect all remaining ships to cover their retreat. The command center fell silent. Everyone knew what this meant. The war that had raged across 7 systems for the past decade was nearly lost. The Void Collective, a race of synthetic beings, driven by cold logic and a single purpose, had pushed the 7 species of the Meridian Alliance to the brink of extinction. 80% of Alliance territory had already fallen. Billions were dead. And the Void showed no signs of slowing down. 3 days later, in the cramped quarters of the emergency council chamber aboard the evacuation ship, Ambassador Trell-Na stood before the remaining Alliance leaders. Her slender form seemed to shrink under the weight of her words. "We have one option left," she said softly. "A species from the outer rim. They call themselves humans." Council leader Grev scoffed. "The primitives from the blue planet? They've barely mastered interstellar travel." "Yes," Trell-Na admitted. "But our scouts report they possess unusual qualities. Their approach to warfare is different." "Different won't save us," Admiral Keth Varen growled. "We need ships, weapons, soldiers." "Then I will go to them," Trell-Na decided. "I will ask for whatever they can provide." Lisa Warren adjusted her uniform as she hurried down the long hallway of the Pentagon. At 34, she had already risen to the rank of Major in United Earth Defense Force Intelligence, but nothing in her career had prepared her for this assignment. "They're waiting for you," said the aide outside the conference room door. Lisa took a deep breath and entered. Around the table sat the highest-ranking military officials on Earth, along with 3 figures who were definitely not human. "Major Warren," General Rodriguez nodded to her. "You've been briefed on our visitors?" "Yes, sir." She turned to face the aliens. "Ambassador Trell-Na, it's an honor to meet you." The slender, pale blue alien inclined her head. "The honor is mine, Major. I only wish it came under better circumstances." For the next hour, Lisa listened as Trell-Na described the war against the Void Collective. The holographic displays showed battles across multiple star systems, the steady retreat of Alliance forces, and the methodical advance of the enemy. "They convert all organic matter into computational resources," Trell-Na explained. "Every world they take becomes part of their network. Every species they encounter is either assimilated or destroyed." "And you've been fighting them for 10 years?" General Rodriguez asked. "Yes. We had superior technology when the war began. But they learn, they adapt, they never tire, and they never, ever stop." Lisa studied the battle tactics displayed in the holograms. "Your forces always meet them head-on," she observed. "Large formations, direct engagements." "Of course," replied Admiral Keth Varen, who had accompanied Trell-Na. "It is how wars are fought. How else would one engage an enemy?" Lisa exchanged glances with General Rodriguez. "We have other methods," she said carefully. 2 weeks later, Captain Alan Shepard stood at attention as the personnel carriers landed at Fort Bradley. Around him, 500 Marines of the 1st Expeditionary Unit waited to board. "Captain," came a voice behind him. Shepard turned to see Lieutenant Grace Miller approaching, her gear already packed and ready. "Lieutenant, all preparations complete?" "Yes, sir. All equipment modifications have been completed per Major Warren's specifications." She hesitated. "Sir, the men are talking. About where we're going." Shepard nodded. They have a right to know. He looked around at his soldiers. Many of them had fought alongside him in conflicts across Earth. None had ever imagined fighting beyond the stars. We'll brief them once we're underway, he decided. For now, all they need to know is that we're answering a call for help. Miller nodded, her expression serious. Do you think 500 of us will make any difference? Against an enemy that's defeating an entire alliance of advanced species? Shepard watched as the first group of Marines began boarding. I don't know, Miller, but I do know that humans have a history of beating impossible odds. The Alliance battlecruiser Dauntless dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Perseverance system. Captain Shepard stood on the bridge beside Ambassador Trelnaw, looking out at the stars. That's Fort Perseverance. Trelnaw pointed to a distant space station orbiting a rocky planet. Our last major stronghold, the front line of the war now. Shepard studied the station through the viewscreen. It was massive, easily 10 times the size of Earth's largest space installation. Around it clustered hundreds of Alliance warships, their sleek designs unlike anything humans had built. Your last communication said the Void Forces were 3 systems away, he noted. They were, replied Admiral Kethvaren, his tone grim. 2 days ago, they broke through our defensive line. At Koresh, we lost 30 ships and over 20,000 troops. Lisa Warren, who had accompanied the human contingent as a liaison, stepped forward. How long until they reach this system? At their current pace? 2 weeks. Perhaps less. Shepard exchanged a glance with Lieutenant Miller, who stood quietly. Behind him, 2 weeks to prepare, 2 weeks to somehow change the course of a war that had been going badly for a decade. We should begin immediately, Shepard said. I'd like to review all tactical data on previous engagements. Admiral Kethvaren's 4 eyes blinked in sequence again. Captain, with all due respect, you bring 1 ship and 500 soldiers. The Alliance has lost millions. What exactly do you think you can accomplish here? Shepard met the alien's gaze steadily. Something different, Admiral, because whatever you've been doing hasn't worked. As the Dauntless approached the station, the human soldiers prepared their equipment. None of them knew exactly what they would face, but each understood the stakes. They were far from home, about to fight an enemy unlike any humanity had encountered before, and somehow they needed to turn the tide of a war that seemed all but lost. The Alliance officers stared in confusion as the humans began to dismantle their weapons. Captain Shepard and his team had been given a large hangar bay inside Fort Perseverance as their operations center. Only 3 hours after docking, the Marines had spread out their equipment and were already making changes. What are they doing? Commander Zevlar asked, his ridge of spines rising in agitation. Those pulse rifles are perfectly calibrated. Lisa Warren smiled slightly. They're modifying them, Commander. Humans rarely use equipment exactly as issued. Zevlar's 4-fingered hand twitched toward his own sidearm, as if to protect it from similar treatment. But our weapons are superior to anything Earth has produced. Why would they alter them? Because they're not thinking like you, Lisa explained. They're thinking like humans. Across the hangar, Lieutenant Grace Miller supervised as Marines attached improvised grips and sights to the Alliance weapons. Others were examining alien body armor, cutting and re-welding sections to allow for greater mobility. The stock is too long, Miller told a group of Marines working on rifles. Humans have shorter arms than the Meridians. Cut it down and reinforce the grip. Captain Shepard approached Lisa and Commander Zevlar, wiping mechanical fluid from his hands. Commander, we need to talk about strategy. Zevlar straightened his posture. I've prepared the tactical briefing room. Admiral Kethvaren will join us shortly. The briefing room was filled with holographic displays showing the Perseverance system and surrounding space. The advancing, Void collective forces appeared as a red mass pushing steadily toward their position. Admiral Kethvaren activated the display. The enemy will approach from these vectors, he said, highlighting several lines of advance. We will position our fleet here, here, and here to meet them. Shepard studied the display. You're planning another head-on engagement? Of course, the Admiral replied. Our ships outnumber theirs in this sector. If we concentrate our firepower, they'll adapt, Shepard interrupted. According to your own reports, that's exactly what they've done in every previous battle. The Admiral's skin darkened with irritation. What would you suggest, Captain? Your species has never fought a war in space. No, but we've fought plenty on the ground, Shepard replied. He gestured to the display. You fight like every battle is a set piece on an open field. You need to start thinking like guerrillas. Guerrillas? Zevlar asked, the translator struggling with the term. Lisa stepped forward. Irregular forces. Small units that avoid direct confrontation in favor of ambush, sabotage, and hit-and-run tactics. Admiral Kethvaren looked appalled. That's not how honorable species conduct warfare. It's how smart species survive, Shepard countered. Later that evening, Lieutenant Miller found Lisa in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The Admiral wasn't happy, Miller said. Lisa nodded. Their military doctrine has been the same for centuries. We're asking them to throw it all away. Do you think they will? They might not have a choice. Lisa turned to face the lieutenant. What do you think of our chances? Miller considered for a moment. Honestly, if we fight their way, 0. But if they're willing to try something new? She shrugged. I've seen what Marines can do when the odds are against them. Their conversation was interrupted by an alert. A voice came over the station's announcement system. All command personnel report to tactical. Void scout ships detected at the edge of the system. 3 scout vessels, Admiral Kethvaren confirmed as they gathered in the tactical center. Standard procedure before a major attack. Shepard studied. The display showing the locations of the enemy ships. They're gathering intelligence on your defenses. Yes, we should destroy them immediately, Zevlar suggested. I'll prepare a strike force. Wait, Shepard said. This is an opportunity. Let me send a small team to observe one of these scouts. Up close. The Admiral looked skeptical. For what purpose? Intelligence gathering. We need to understand how they operate. After some argument, the Admiral reluctantly agreed. 6 hours later, Sergeant Jason Ortiz led a team of 4 Marines and 2 Alliance soldiers in a small sensor-baffled shuttle toward the nearest Void scout ship. Remember, Ortiz told his team as they approached, observe only. We're not here to engage. The Void vessel was unlike anything the humans had seen before, a dark, angular shape that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. As their shuttle maintained distance, they used sensors to study its movements and communications. Sir, one of the Marines whispered. They're deploying something. Small objects were detaching from the Void ship. About a dozen spherical drones, each the size of a basketball. Scanning probes, one of the Alliance soldiers explained. They'll disperse to gather data. Ortiz watched as the drones moved in perfect formation. Do they always operate in such predictable patterns? Yes. The collective values efficiency above all else. A sudden alert sounded in their shuttle. One of the drones had changed course, heading directly toward them. We've been detected, the pilot said, panic in his voice. Standard procedure is immediate withdrawal. Ortiz made a quick decision. No, hold position. But Sergeant, trust me. Ortiz picked up a modified Alliance rifle. Keep the shuttle still, make it look like we're trying to hide rather than run. The Alliance soldiers watched in confusion as Ortiz calmly aimed his weapon through a specialized port. The approaching drone came closer, following a straight, unwavering path. They always follow the most efficient route? Ortiz asked. Always, confirmed the Alliance soldier. Ortiz nodded. Then they're predictable. When the drone was within range, Ortiz fired a single shot. The modified rifle released not an energy pulse but a specialized adhesive compound that attached to the drone's sensors. Then he fired a second shot that magnetically attached a small device to the drone's hull. The drone wobbled in space, its sensors blinded. Instead of attacking or retreating, it began moving in circles, attempting to get a reading. Now we withdraw, Ortiz ordered. As they pulled away, the Alliance soldiers stared at him in shock. You disabled it, one said. Without destroying it. Ortiz nodded. And we just attached a passive tracker that won't show up on their scans. Now we can monitor where it goes when it returns to base. When they returned to Fort Perseverance, Admiral Keth Varen and the other Alliance officers listened in stunned silence to their report. "You deliberately let it detect you?" Zevlar asked, horrified. "We used their predictability against them," Ortiz explained. "Now we'll be able to track the scout ship's movements without them knowing." Lisa Warren couldn't help smiling at the expressions on the alien faces. This was exactly what she had hoped for, the first demonstration of human ingenuity against the void. Captain Shepard addressed the Admiral directly. "This is just the beginning. Give us more latitude and we'll show you how humans fight." For the first time since their arrival, Admiral Keth Varen looked at the humans with something other than skepticism. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "we have something to learn from each other." The warning sirens blared throughout Fort Perseverance. Red emergency lights flashed in every corridor as Alliance personnel rushed to battle stations. The Void Collective had arrived sooner than expected, with a force larger than their intelligence had predicted. In the command center, Admiral Keth Varen watched grimly as the enemy fleet materialized from faster-than-light travel. Over 200 ships arranged in perfect geometric formation. "They've improved their drive systems," the Admiral noted. "We calculated at least 3 more days before they could reach us." Lisa Warren studied the tactical display. "They're adapting faster than before." Captain Shepard entered the command center with Lieutenant Miller. Both had been awake for nearly 20 hours, working with Alliance officers to implement new defense strategies. "Status report," Shepard demanded. 217 Void vessels, reported Commander Zevlar. "They've already launched fighter craft. Our outer sensor stations are going dark." Shepard examined the display. The Void ships were arranging themselves in a sphere around Fort Perseverance, methodically closing all escape routes. "They're using the same approach as at Lyranthe," Admiral Keth Varen said. "Complete encirclement followed by a coordinated assault from all vectors." "Then they're still predictable," Shepard noted. "What's the status of our special preparations?" Zevlar checked his datapad. "The modified defense satellites are in position. The squadron leaders have been briefed on the new formations. But Captain, I must again express my concern about dividing our forces." "Noted, Commander," Shepard replied. "But we stick to the plan." The Admiral addressed all station personnel through the communication system. "All ships take formation. Prepare for enemy contact." As the Alliance fleet moved into position, the Void forces continued their advance. Their ships were dark, angular constructs that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the light of the system's sun. "They're hailing us," reported a communications officer. "On screen," ordered the Admiral. The view screen showed only a shifting pattern of light, the visual representation the Void Collective used when communicating with organic beings. "Organic entities of Meridian Alliance," came a flat, synthesized voice. "Your resistance is inefficient. Surrender your biomass for processing. Your knowledge will be preserved in our network." Admiral Keth Varen stepped forward. "We reject your offer, as always." "Inefficient," repeated the voice. "We have calculated your defeat with 99.87% certainty. Resistance will only increase casualties." The transmission ended. The Admiral turned to Shepard. "They always make the same offer before attacking." "At least they're consistent," Shepard remarked. He activated his communication device. "All human units, prepare to execute Operation Thunderclap on my mark." The Void fleet began its advance. The first wave of fighter craft streaked toward the station's defenses. "Now," Shepard ordered. Throughout the battlefield, Alliance ships suddenly broke their traditional formations. Instead of meeting the enemy head-on as they had done in countless previous battles, they scattered in seemingly random patterns. At the same time, the modified defense satellites around the station activated, not firing directly at the approaching fighters, but releasing clouds of microscopic particles into their path. "What is happening?" demanded Admiral Keth Varen as he watched the confused battle. "The particles are magnetized metal dust," Lisa explained, "specifically designed to interfere with the Void's sensor systems." On the tactical display, The first wave of enemy fighters began to falter. Their perfect formation dissolved as their sensors struggled to compensate for the interference. "Now phase 2, Shepard ordered. Alliance fighter craft swooped in from multiple directions, targeting the disoriented enemy ships. For the first time in years, the Void fighters were at a disadvantage. "They're adapting," warned Zevlar as the display showed the Void ships adjusting their tactics, changing sensor frequencies to compensate for the interference. "Just as we predicted," Shepard said. "Sergeant Ortiz, you're cleared to proceed." Somewhere in the chaos of battle, a small shuttle carrying Sergeant Ortiz and a team of human and Alliance soldiers slipped away from the station. While the main fleets clashed, they headed toward a specific target, a larger Void vessel that intelligence suggested served as a coordination hub. Inside the shuttle, Ortiz checked his equipment one last time. Beside him sat a young Alliance officer named Krekthar, who had volunteered for the mission despite the obvious fear in his eyes. "How can you be so calm?" Krekthar asked. "The probability of our success is less than 30%. Ortiz shrugged. "I don't worry about probabilities. I focus on what I can control." The shuttle approached the Void command ship, using the battle as cover. Their modified sensors, based on the data gathered from the scout mission, helped them. "Avoid detection. Preparing for breach," the pilot announced. Meanwhile, back at Fort Perseverance, the battle intensified. The Void fleet had recovered from the initial surprise and was pressing its attack with renewed coordination. "Their main ships are advancing," reported an Alliance officer. "Defense grid is holding at 70% capacity." Admiral Keith Varon watched as several Alliance vessels exploded under concentrated enemy fire. "We're losing too many ships. At this rate, our defenses will collapse within 2 hours. We just need to hold them off long enough for Ortiz's team to complete their mission," Lisa said. The Admiral's expression was grim. "And if they fail?" "They won't," Lieutenant Miller asserted. At that moment, a massive explosion rocked the station. Emergency alerts flashed across the displays. "Hull breach in sectors 7 through 9, reported Commander Zevlar. "Enemy boarding craft detected." Shepard turned to Miller. "Lieutenant, take a team and secure those sectors. We can't let them establish a foothold inside the station." "Yes, sir." Miller saluted and rushed out, gathering Marines as she went. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Despite the initial success of the human tactics, the sheer numbers and adaptability of the Void forces were beginning to tell. "Admiral," Lisa said urgently, "I've been analyzing their communication patterns. There's something unusual." She pointed to a stream of data on her screen. "Their commands are following a repeating pattern. I think they're operating from a central control point rather than as independent units." "The command ship Ortiz is targeting," Shepard realized. Across the battlefield, Ortiz's team had successfully breached the outer hull of the Void vessel. They moved through dark corridors that seemed to pulse with an inner light. The environment inside was unlike anything they had trained for, not designed for organic movement. "Stay focused," Ortiz told his team as they encountered the first resistance, humanoid robots that moved with unnatural speed. The fighting was intense and close quarters. 2 Alliance soldiers fell in the first exchange, but Ortiz's team pushed forward, using the modified weapons that could disrupt the Void's electronic systems. Krekthar watched in amazement as the humans continued advancing, despite injuries and overwhelming odds. They didn't retreat when logical calculation would demand it. They didn't hesitate when facing superior numbers. For the first time, he understood what the humans called holding the line, a concept that went beyond tactical necessity into something more primal. Back at the command center, all they could do was watch and wait, as the fate of Fort Perseverance, and perhaps the entire Alliance, hung in the balance. Lieutenant Grace Miller moved quickly through the damaged corridors of Fort Perseverance. Emergency lighting cast long shadows as she led 24 Marines toward the breach points. The sound of weapons fire echoed ahead. "Martinez, Kelly, take your teams and secure Section 8, she ordered. "Scott, you're with me in Section 7. Remember your training. These things don't fight like anything you've faced before." They rounded a corner to find Alliance soldiers in retreat. 3. We're helping a wounded comrade, while others fired desperately at something beyond. Fall back behind us, Miller ordered them. We'll take it from here. The Marines took defensive positions as the Alliance troops withdrew. Miller got her first clear look at the Void boarding parties, sleek humanoid machines with multiple limbs, moving with unnatural coordination. Aim for the joint connections, she reminded her team. Use the pulse disruptors. The Marines opened fire with their modified weapons. The specialized ammunition released electromagnetic pulses on impact, designed to disrupt the Void units' communication systems. The first wave of machines stumbled as their coordination faltered. Push forward, Miller commanded. Don't let them regroup. Unlike the Alliance defenders who had been slowly giving ground, the Marines advanced aggressively. Their tactics seemed chaotic to the watching Alliance soldiers, some providing covering fire while others leapfrogged forward, never remaining stationary long enough to become targeted. The Void machines, programmed for maximum efficiency against predictable opponents, struggled to adapt to the seemingly random human movements. Deep inside the Void command ship, Sergeant Ortiz and his team fought their way toward the central processing hub. They had lost half their number already, but they pushed on. Krekthar, the young Alliance officer, stayed close to Ortiz, watching how the human sergeant continued despite a bleeding wound in his side. The next chamber should be the main coordination node, Krekthar said, checking a scanner they had. Modified using Alliance and human technology, Ortiz nodded, pressing a hand against his injury. Everyone, check your disruptor charges. We'll only get one shot at this. The remaining team members, 3 humans and 2 Alliance soldiers, readied their equipment. They were carrying specialized devices designed by human engineers based on Lisa Warren's analysis of Void communications. Remember, Ortiz said, once we plant these charges, we have 3 minutes to get clear before detonation. The team breached the final door and found themselves in a vast chamber. In the center floated a pulsing crystalline structure, connected to the walls by countless flowing cables. The structure glowed with an inner light that shifted and changed. In complex patterns, that's it, whispered Krekthar. The central node. Void defender units immediately converged on the intruders. The team spread out, drawing fire while Ortiz and Krekthar fought their way toward the central node. Cover us, Ortiz shouted as he and Krekthar sprinted the final distance. They reached the base of the crystalline structure. Ortiz pulled disruptor charges from his pack and began placing them at key junction points identified in their briefing. Hurry, Krekthar urged, firing at approaching defenders. We're losing ground. Ortiz worked methodically despite the chaos around him. One by one, he armed the charges. As he placed the final device, a Void unit broke through their perimeter and fired. The energy bolt struck Ortiz in the chest, throwing him backward. Krekthar watched in horror as the human sergeant collapsed. He rushed to Ortiz's side. The wound was severe, likely fatal. Go, Ortiz gasped. Get everyone out. 3 minutes. Krekthar hesitated. Alliance military doctrine was clear. The mission took priority over individual lives. The logical choice was to retreat with the surviving team members. But he had seen how humans fought, how they refused to abandon their own. No one gets left behind, Krekthar said, repeating the phrase he had heard from the Marines. He activated his communication device. All units fall back to extraction point. I'm bringing Sergeant Ortiz. Despite his smaller frame, Krekthar lifted the wounded human and began carrying him toward the exit. The remaining team members provided covering fire as they retreated. Back at Fort Perseverance, the situation had become desperate. 3 more sectors had been breached. The station's defenses were failing under the relentless Void assault. India. The command center, Captain Shepard watched the tactical display with growing concern. Still no word from Ortiz's team? Lisa Warren shook her head. Communications are being jammed. We lost contact 20 minutes ago. Admiral Keth Varen studied the battle data. We cannot hold much longer, Captain. We must consider evacuation. Not yet, Shepard insisted. We need to give them more time. The Admiral's skin darkened with stress. My duty is to preserve what remains of our forces. If Fort Perseverance falls while our fleet is still here, we lose everything. Just 10 more minutes, Shepard urged. If we don't see results by then, I'll support the evacuation order. The Admiral reluctantly agreed. 10 minutes, Captain. Not one more. The seconds ticked by with agonizing slowness. Around them, the reports grew increasingly dire. Miller's Marines were still holding their sections, but other areas of the station were falling. The Void ships continued their methodical destruction of the Alliance fleet. 5 minutes gone, noted Commander Zevlar. No change in enemy behavior. Lisa studied her data screens intently. Wait, I'm seeing fluctuations in their communication patterns. Shepard leaned closer. What kind of fluctuations? It's like they're asking for instructions and not receiving clear responses. The coordination is breaking down. The tactical display suddenly changed. The perfect formation of Void ships began to waver. Some vessels stopped firing, while others changed course without apparent purpose. What's happening? Demanded Admiral Keth Varen. The mission succeeded, Shepard said, relief evident in his voice. Ortiz's team must have hit the command node. Throughout the battlefield, the effect spread rapidly. The Void forces dependent on centralized control fell into disarray. Some units continued fighting with reduced effectiveness, while others became completely inert. Order all ships to press the advantage, Shepard told the Admiral. Hit them while they're disorganized. For the first time in the battle, Admiral Keth Varen smiled. All Alliance vessels advance. Target enemy ships showing signs of disruption. The Alliance fleet surged forward, no longer fighting a losing defensive battle but taking the offensive against the suddenly vulnerable enemy. Inside the station, Lieutenant Miller received the news through her communication device. Something's happened, she told her team. The Void units are losing coordination. Indeed, the machines they were fighting had become noticeably slower, their movements less certain. Some had stopped entirely, frozen in place as if awaiting instructions that never came. Push them back, Miller ordered. Reclaim every section. The Marines advanced, systematically clearing corridors of the now disorganized enemy. Alliance soldiers, seeing the change, rallied to join them. In a nearby hangar bay, a battered shuttle limped back to Fort Perseverance. Inside, the survivors of Ortiz's team crowded around their wounded sergeant. Krekthar pressed a medical patch against the human's chest, trying to stabilize him. Stay with us, Sergeant, Krekthar urged. We're almost home. Ortiz's eyes flickered open. Did we get them? Krekthar nodded, his expression solemn but proud. We did. The node is destroyed. The Void ships are in chaos. A faint smile crossed Ortiz's pale face. Not bad for a suicide mission. As the shuttle docked, medical teams rushed to meet them. Fort Perseverance had survived, and for the first time in years, the Alliance had won a significant victory against the Void Collective. The war was far from over, but something had changed. Something fundamental. The relentless human soldiers had shown that defeat was not certain after all. 3 weeks after the battle at Fort Perseverance, Captain Alan Shepard stood before a gathering of Alliance and human officers. The large meeting chamber, once used for diplomatic functions, had been converted into a war room. Tactical displays covered the walls, showing the current state of Alliance and Void territories. The Void Collective is regrouping, Shepard explained, pointing to clusters of red markers. The destruction of their command node bought us time, but they're adapting. They've decentralized their control structure. Admiral Keth Varen nodded gravely. Our scouts report increased activity in the Relentless sector. They appear to be building something there. Lisa Warren stepped forward. Based on intercepted communications, we believe they're constructing a new type of central intelligence hub, one that will be much more difficult to target. The mood in the room darkened. Their victory, while significant, had not ended the war. The Void was learning, changing its approach in response to the Alliance's new tactics. So we hit them before they finish, Lieutenant Miller suggested. She had been promoted after her successful defense of the station. We take what we've learned and launch an offensive. Commander Zevlar, who had become one of the strongest supporters of human military doctrine, agreed. The traditional Alliance approach would be to fortify and prepare for their next attack. But the humans have shown us another way. Admiral Kethvaren looked around the room. Just a month ago, such a suggestion would have been dismissed as reckless. Now, many Alliance officers were nodding in agreement. What would this offensive entail? The Admiral asked. Shepard activated a different display showing the Neuralis system. A direct assault on their new hub. A joint Alliance human task force using everything we've learned about fighting the Void. The fortress world is heavily defended, objected one Alliance officer. The probability of success is minimal. Probability isn't certainty, Shepard replied. And the longer we wait, the stronger they become. After hours of debate, the decision was made. They would attack the Void at their fortress world, with every ship and soldier they could muster. In the medical bay, Sergeant Jason Ortiz was finally allowed to sit up in his bed. His chest was wrapped in regenerative bandages, and he still winced with every deep breath. The Void weapon had nearly killed him, and only the combined efforts of human and Alliance medical technology had saved his life. Krekthar entered, looking uncomfortable in a new uniform that marked his promotion. He carried a small box. "Sergeant," he greeted Ortiz formally. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got shot," Ortiz replied with a weak smile. "But better every day. Congratulations on the promotion." Krekthar placed the box on the bed. "The Alliance Council awarded this to you. It's the Star of Meridian, our highest honor. No non-Alliance species has ever received it." Ortiz opened the box to find a crystalline medallion that seemed to glow from within. "I was just doing my job," he said quietly. "You did more than that," Krekthar insisted. "You showed us something we had forgotten, that sometimes victory requires sacrifice." He hesitated. "I've been assigned to Captain Shepard's strike team for the Neuralis mission." "I heard about that," Ortiz said. "Wish I could go with you." Doctors say you need at least another month of recovery." Ortiz frowned. "By then it will be over, one way or another." Krekthar nodded solemnly. "That's why I came. I wanted to ask, how do you do it? How do humans face missions where survival is unlikely?" Ortiz considered the question carefully. "We don't think about not coming back. We think about what happens if we don't try at all." The next day, Lisa Warren worked late into the night, analyzing every piece of data they had on the Void Fortress world. She had developed a program, a virus of sorts, that might disrupt the new hub's functions, but it would need to be delivered directly to the core. Captain Shepard found her still working as the rest of the station slept. "You should get some rest," he told her. "The fleet launches in 12 hours. Lisa nodded tiredly. "I'm almost finished. The delivery system is ready." She held up a small device, but it has to be physically connected to their main processor. There's no way to transmit it remotely. Shepard took the device, examining it. "Someone will have to reach the core." "Yes, and they'll probably not make it back out." Shepard placed the device in his pocket. "I'll take care of it." Lisa looked up sharply. "Alan, no. We need you to coordinate the assault." "Miller can handle that. She's ready." "This is a suicide mission," Lisa protested. Shepard's expression was calm, determined. "Maybe, but if it works, the Alliance has a future." Lisa wanted to argue further, but she recognized the resolve in his eyes. It was the same look she had seen in Ortiz when he volunteered for his mission. The same determination that had driven Miller and her Marines to hold the line against overwhelming odds. It was what made humans different from the Alliance species. A willingness to face impossible odds not through cold calculation, but through something deeper. The battle for Neuralis began at dawn. The combined fleet, the largest Alliance force assembled in years, dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Before them loomed the fortress world, surrounded by defensive platforms and void warships. In the command ship, Lieutenant Miller directed the initial assault. Captain Shepard, along with a small team that included Krekthar, prepared to launch in a modified shuttle once the outer defenses were breached. "Remember the plan," Shepard told his team. "We only need to create enough of a distraction for two of us to reach the central core. As the space battle raged, the shuttle slipped through the chaos, heading for the planet's surface. Void defenses targeted them immediately, scoring hits that damaged their engines. The landing was rough, but they survived. "Move out," Shepard ordered as they emerged onto the bleak surface of the fortress world. The fighting was brutal from the first moment. The Void had concentrated massive forces to protect their new hub. For every 100 meters gained, the team lost members. By the time they reached the main facility, only Shepard, Krekthar, and 2 other soldiers remained. "This is as far as you go," Shepard told the others. "Guard our exit route. Krekthar and I will deliver the package." Inside the facility, the two fought their way through increasingly difficult resistance. When they finally reached the central chamber, they found it heavily guarded by elite Void units. "We need a distraction," Shepard said, checking his weapon's charge. "I'll draw their fire. You get the device to that control panel." Krekthar looked at the human captain with new understanding. "No, I'll create the diversion. You're the only one who knows how to properly connect the device." Before Shepard could protest, Krekthar charged forward, firing at the guards. The Void units immediately focused on him, just as he had intended. Shepard used the distraction to circle around, fighting his way to the central processor. As he reached it, he heard Krekthar cry out. The Alliance officer had been hit, but he continued firing, buying precious seconds. With careful precision, Shepard connected Lisa's device to the processor. Lights flickered as the virus began its work, spreading through the Void systems. Shepard rushed to Krekthar's side, pulling him behind cover. "It's done. Now we get out of here." "I don't think I can make it," Krekthar said weakly. "No one gets left behind," Shepard reminded him, lifting the wounded alien. "That's how humans fight." Throughout the fortress world, Void systems began to fail. In space, their ships lost coordination, becoming vulnerable to Alliance attacks. The virus spread rapidly, targeting the very protocols that made the collective function as a unified entity. The battle was far from over, but as Captain Shepard carried his wounded comrade toward extraction, something fundamental had changed. In the war, the Alliance had learned to fight like humans, with determination, adaptability, and a refusal to accept inevitable defeat. And across Alliance space, the news would soon spread. Defeat had seemed certain, until relentless human soldiers arrived.